In this video, let us work on adding the midground mountain. To start with, let's head over to Bridge and open up image 5728. Now we are going to be using different extraction techniques, so for now, just bring the whole image into our matte painting. Let me zoom out so I can transform it in. And flip horizontal because you can see the image has a opposite lighting direction to what we had, so we had to flip it. Using our organization, I'm just putting it in a folder called MG for midground and setting the blending mode to normal. Let's drag it between the background and the foreground layers. Turn on our black and white global. And now let's start to position this in. Transforming and scaling it as required. Let's get the scale working for us. Alright, that looks good for now. So let's start with the extraction process. So let me add a layer mask to it and choose a brush. Let's choose the chalk brush for now. Turning off my foreground and sky layers. Now going with a full black color and starting to paint into the mask for this mountain. Now because the values between the sky and the mountains in this image are really close, using techniques like we used before in the previous video might take a long time to give us the right result. So in order to speed things up, I'm just going to quickly paint my mask using a standard brush. Following the edges. Now we are revealing into our background layer here. It gets a bit faint, but I'm just going to follow the general contour and turning off my background layer. I shot this image on the Icefields Parkway between Banff and Jasper. Had a pretty good day, and I have to say the Canadian Rockies look absolutely fantastic. This was, if I remember correctly, somewhere near the Bow Lake. Continuing with my extraction. Getting over this edge. Now we saw a nice glacier just to the left, and we want to keep it. We want to use that into our image to add a little bit of dynamism to it. Continuing the same on to the left side. Now, since this image has a little better lighting difference between the shadow section and the light section compared to the previous image, that should help us. Now, switching to my polygonal lasso tool, let me make a selection. Now, we're going to use this to mask out the sky. Continuing over to the right-hand side. Going over the glacier. And then filling it up with black. So let me put on my background and the sky. You can see this mountain is needs to be scaled in just slightly. And position it above. Let's move it around so that it's just underneath that cloud. That looks good. So now let's work on the integration for this mountain. Like before, we have to prepare a rock and snow mask for it. So let's choose a channel with the maximum contrast. It's the blue again. Let me drag and make a copy of that. And let me rename that as MG Mountain Rocks Mask. right? So opening up levels, let's start pushing our values up so we are getting a crunchier image. Now I'm using the bright or the white eyedropper tool to sample the levels of the snow, and then pushing the black up. You can see that a little bit of the diffused shadow, which is supposed to be on the snow, is also turning quite dark. So using our overlay technique that we used before in the last video, I'm just going to go over and brighten up those sections. Using a soft round brush here, again set to overlay, let's bring those shadow sections up. We want our mask to be as precise as possible. Now that looks like a good mask. Just going over and making sure that all the values are syncing in, switching between the black and white value. Now we do not need this lower sections. Let me use my selection tool and try and select that all. Like if you're not going to use it, let's remove it right now, rather than it spilling over into some other layer later on. Inverting it, selecting the mask, going back to our layers, a new layer, and clicking on the mask automatically adds that in. Now, when I turn the black and white layer off, you can see that there is a huge difference in color and tonality between the two images. So let me add a curves layer over that. Switch back to black and white. We need to balance the values first before we can go over and start adjusting colors. And I'm adjusting the whites at the back section that is near the glacier so that they are at the same level as what the background mountain is. Now adding another curves layer, I'm going to push all the values down, that is pushing the white point down slightly, and adding another curves on top, and this time dipping the middle point. Now I'm filling all of these layers, which come with their own adjustment masks, with black, using a gradient tool, going from black to white. I'm just going to pan across this image and start revealing it where we want it to be revealed. So this is emphasizing the depth on the mountain. So using a soft brush tool and changing the node back to normal, let me paint in a shadow section. Like I'm painting in where this mountain is in shadow. I'm painting with a very slight amount of pressure on my tablet, going over the shadow section, and then adding more flow and opacity to sections which need more. So let's add another curves on top. And this one, we want to push just the mids up. Just the middle section. It's that part which needs to be lifted. Again, covering that with black. And then painting it into the mask for the lighter side. So now that we have this mountain extracted, in the next lesson, let's go over some basic integration techniques.